What a frustrating experience. There were so many points during this playthrough where this was almost an incredibly positive video encouraging you to give this forgotten gem a chance, but alas, it was not to be. Now, all I have to bring you is a story of failed endings and wasted potential. We all know Watch Dogs failed to live up to hype at release, not showing nearly what was promised at E3 in the final product, but man, I can see a great game buried in here that was never allowed to fully form. There's good moments here, and good ideas, and sometimes good execution. But somehow, through all of it, Watch Dogs manages to somehow be less than the sum of its parts. Gameplay that at its best feels great and enables a brutal protagonist who can feel like a force of nature, but not because of what makes the game unique. There's a tragic story of revenge and a lost soul here to be told, but it's wasted in the pursuit of something far less interesting. And a DLC following a character that has the potential to have an all time villain along with a franchise defining character arc, but it stumbles across the line, leaving it feeling unserious and unimportant. This is the story of how Watch Dogs could have been a great game, but was marred by Ubisoft's relentless pursuit of mediocrity. In truth, this video is about how Bad Blood almost made Watch Dogs worth buying, but I can't discuss the story of Raymond Kenny without discussing Aiden Pierce, so that's where the story has to start. When you first launch the game, you'll see how we got here: a theft gone wrong, an innocent girl killed, and a man driven by rage and guilt dedicated to finding who did this. But the important part isn't what happened, it's what it resulted in. Aiden Pierce may be our protagonist, but there's no good guys in this story. You can justify this level of savagery, but not like this. At the end of the day, there may have been a hit called in and it may have cost the life of Aiden's 6-year-old niece Lena, but it was his actions that caused this. His life of crime, his choice of partner, his waste of gifts bestowed upon him. The guilt that hangs over him the entire game ends up justified. So that's fine, we have a protagonist who isn't a good person, fighting fire with fire. I can dig that. What makes Watch Dogs interesting is that in the end, when it's all finished, I can't decide what I think of Aiden. He'll do a lot of good, but I'm very unsure where his line is, but we'll get back to that later. For now, we have to discuss who he is right now. I like where the game starts here. We're not stepping into the life of Aiden, but into the life of Chicago's vigilante. A brutal man who in this moment has caught up to the one responsible for Lena's death. And yet what we won't find is answers, instead a scared man who claims to not know anything who's now unconscious. It's time to move, so for now, we get into the intro of another one of our characters in Jordy, a local fixer Aiden hired to help in his investigation. As usual, Ubisoft writes crazy better than it writes nuance, so he's an extremely entertaining character. Jordy, who also acts as a good indicator of where Aiden is in life. If he's working with a guy like Jordy, you know he doesn't have a moral compass that points straight north at any given time. However, I have to agree with his decision to work with him because frankly, he's either a magician or significantly smarter than Aiden. You see, for unknown reasons, they will take separate paths out of the stadium we're in, which is very clearly Wrigley Field as we're in Chicago, but it's called Mays Stadium for what I can only assume are copyright reasons. Anyways, in the time it takes Aiden to get to an exit which requires hacking doors, slipping past multiple police patrols, using lures to get past some, and at one point even blacking out the entire stadium, Jordy has already gotten Maurice's unconscious body out of there. I know it's because this is a tutorial and the devs needed some way to teach us game mechanics as well as open the game with essentially a cool set piece in the blackout, which introduces Aiden's hacker contact Bad Boy 17, but would providing a little bit of context being so bad? Just some reason that Aiden had to take the hard path out, like going to the security center to unlock the back door remotely. This in so many ways will go on to define Watch Dogs, style over substance. I'll give them this though, it sure as hell is stylish. Also, I was not expecting the soundtrack to go quite so hard in this moment. When we get back to Aiden's hideout, a motel room with the obligatory wall of newspaper and string that means absolutely nothing to us, we'll then see that he's still holding on to some part of a happier life, checking in on his sister Nikki and nephew Jack. Then of course, we have to get to the nightmare where we rewatch what was literally in the intro like 20 minutes ago. Did you guys think I forgot? This isn't reminding me of Aiden's loss, it's reminding me of your edgelord use of the digital glitch effect, which does nothing to improve this scene, managing only to make it harder to watch. I'm sorry, but I'm literally watching a child being murdered right now, and I can't take it seriously because it looks like an r/anonymous post. Oh well, this is where you learn how to play the rest of the game, more or less, so we can take a pit stop and talk about it. I'll just be upfront about it, there's a ton of potential in Watch Dogs Sandbox that wasn't realized until the second game. As a result, this is for the most part your standard open world cover shooter with pre-placed grenades all over the place. Don't get me wrong, this game can be really fun in the right moments, especially with the difficulty turned up, as being outpositioned has serious consequences, with death coming quickly. The problem is that the whole point of Watch Dogs is to be a hacker using the city as your weapon, death coming at the push of a button. The problem is that there's only one button in different shades of boom. Take a look how you can blow up enemies by hacking this, or this, or this. Yes, I know you in theory have other abilities when you're hacking, like when you unlock the ability to disrupt a person's comms or send them a distracting message to allow you to move towards or past them, or you could just hack the grenades off of them so they can explode. There's craftables that in theory can add depth to the world like the lure, which is exactly what it sounds like and can allow you room to move in situations where you'd be spotted otherwise, or to set traps and spots to lead your enemies into, you guessed it, more explosions. The other tools, unfortunately, are reactive, not proactive, which is a theme in the game, it must be said. Take the Jam Comms tool. Yeah, it's great to prevent reinforcement calls, but that only happens when you've screwed up and gotten into open conflict. Or look at Blackout, one of the coolest tools visually, and it does look awesome, but all it manages to accomplish is to take away the rest of your abilities. You're the hacker. You're the one who has the ability to affect the world through the weaknesses you find in technology around you, so why would you turn it all off? The same goes for car chases. You have the ability to hurt your opponents with steam pipes, barriers, traffic flow at intersections, but none of these are unique. They're as simple as pressing Q on time. Sure, you can raise a bridge or open a gate to aid in your escape, but that's dependent on there being one and the timing being right. Also, knowing what's on the other side. The interesting thing is that this didn't make the game unfun, it's just that the fun was rarely found in what makes the game special. Once you can remove mouse acceleration, which I must say requires far too much work both with in-game settings and in the game files. Guys, mouse acceleration sucks as a general concept, but most of all in shooters. Please, I beg you, if you're gonna put that garbage in your game, at least let me turn it off in a setting rather than in a fucking text editor. That being said, once you can actually aim without problems, the gunplay can be incredibly satisfying, with the Spec Ops 1911 having some seriously great feedback that almost became addicting. Also, some levels like this one, where you get to move to save your nephew, almost feel designed around the pure gunplay, letting you move through your enemies like a Reaper come to collect. This is the best part of the Watch Dogs combat, not sitting on cameras picking off enemies with button prompts. There's other parts of the open world, like random crimes where you're punished for stopping a crime a little bit too early, which makes absolutely no sense. I don't care at which point you stop my mugging, please just stop my mugging. Or fixer contracts, which for the most part just aren't very interesting, like convoys where you set up an ambush to blow up your enemies, or gang strongholds where you knock out some chosen foes. Then you have the so-called investigations, in which you don't actually investigate anything. You go to a location marked on a map, you scan something, then you do that enough times where you have a final encounter that is neither rewarding nor unique in premise to anything else you've done in the game. I wanted to make a dent on human trafficking, but in the end, the big moment was just this. The weapon smuggling final mission was kind of a cool arena, but not incredible. Then there's the serial killer brutally murdering people across the city, only for the final confrontation to be essentially a random crime event. The last thing you have are online invasions where, without warning and often at very inconvenient times, you'll have players enter your game undetected to steal your data and you'll be forced to hunt them down. This comes in various shades of excitement. There are some skilled players who will hide where you just can't get to, and you have to wait for a moment where they feel the need to taunt you in order to take them out. There are some that actually play a clever but fair stealth game that can have you running around in circles trying to figure out where they are as the search area closes and your time runs down. Sometimes you can feel incredibly smart following the clues to your opponent's locations, like here where I noticed an empty running car that could have been used to climb a roof. Then there's people who actually aren't that clever, like this one who I ran down after taking the time to scan a serial killer body and listening to the recording he left. The vast majority of encounters I have, however, are people with very little concept of the term stealth, often making themselves known before the hack even starts. This is the most dynamic the world gets, but it's not enough to define this game. That's that though, and we can get back to discussing the narrative. This isn't going to be my usual detailed mission by mission breakdown because, as I said before, this video is really about Bad Blood more than the main game, and you only need an overview to discuss that. Aiden will continue his life as the vigilante, hunting for those who called in the hit that cost Lena her life and stopping crimes while he does. This will also include someone making threatening calls to his sister, which, while unclear at first, kicks off our plot. We cross paths with the local mafia boss Lucky Quinn, who to the surprise of no one will turn out to be the guy we're looking for in the end, but Aiden I guess can't know that yet. It's at this point where Aiden is given a gift, meeting with his dead set contact known online as Bad Boy 17 and in person as Clara. After an uncomfortable introduction, she provides us with the phone, which will allow us to access most of the city. This is really just the abilities I discussed earlier, but it happens so early you might as well have it the whole time. It's really more about meeting Clara. Then with a little digging you'll find out who was behind the harassment of Nikki. It was Damien, Aiden's former partner, who was the one whose actions at the Merlot job in the opening caused a hit to be called in on Aiden and his family. After meeting him and informing the dude that we would in fact not like to be friends, there's this dumbass mission that asks us to remember. And I'm sorry, but remember what? And who were you talking to? Neither Aiden nor I had forgotten about Lena's death. It's kind of the whole driving force behind the story. Like, how little faith do you have in your player base? Like, Jesus, Batman has less trips to Crime Alley than this. Anyways, after the friendly approach fails, Damien kidnaps Nikki so that he can force us to work with him. But thankfully, we can get Jax somewhere safe, so there's only one hostage. When we're ordered to follow a lead that will help us track down the other hacker from the Merlot job, we work alongside Clara, which will lead to us tracking down the bunker. To do so, we'll also be tracking down Tobias, a former Bloom employee who now lives on the street selling goodies for hackers like us. He'll come back later. Finding where the CTOS system was designed is cool, but the bunker doesn't really live up to much, as it's less of a sick hideout that unlocks endless possibilities, and more of a plot device to allow us to do hacker stuff in the dark. We learn that we'll need to get into Rossi Fremont, a project home to a local gang run by a man named Iraq, a crafty hacker who holds a surprising amount of power. We'll work on getting in using Iraq's cousin Bedbug, a weak link we can blackmail into helping. This will lead us to the auction, where Lucky Quinn will be auctioning off women, so we'll go undercover, killing and impersonating one nasty dude named Crispin in order to get in. The auction is a great mission for a couple of reasons. Its atmosphere makes you feel exactly how it should. Uncomfortable, angry, and just kinda gross being there. But it's also a reminder of who Aiden is. He expresses an interest in helping free the women here, but that's not the mission. He's here to copy the key hidden in Iraq's dog tags, and that's what we do before having our cover blown and having to run. He calls the cops on the auction at least. With the last piece of the puzzle, we get a surprisingly challenging mission as we send Bedbug in, guiding him from cameras as he sneaks through Rossi Fremont. He gets you into the server room, but you'll be stopped from finishing the hack early when Bedbug is found. This is a great moment. Aiden has crossed the line here. He took advantage of a vulnerable kid to keep himself safe and got him killed. Bedbug wasn't built for this life, and Aiden will have to live with this, and he feels it knowing he did wrong. You can hear it in his voice. How will this affect Aiden for the rest of the story? How will he cope with his actions? How will he move? Oh, hold on, I'm getting a call.
Hey, this thing still work?
Bedbug, you're alive.
Yep, big Rise of Skywalker vibes on this one. With this, we will have to recruit more help to get into Rossi Fremont and find a way past Iraq's complicated encryption. What we need is Raymond Kenny, a former CTOS dev that back in 2003 caused a blackout nationwide intended to be a warning about the dangers of the CTOS system, but it resulted in the deaths of 11 people, and he's been in hiding ever since. The hardest part about finding him is really just going shot for shot when you track him down drinking in Pawnee. That and not dying laughing when Aiden tells the bartender he's not a cash kind of guy. Yes, Aiden, you absolutely are. We help scrub any mention of Ray at the local Bloom facility, and after helping him escape from fixtures we inadvertently put on his trail, we return to the bunker to form a plan. With the help of Mr. Kenny, we head back to Rossi Fremont to retrieve the info from Iraq's server, which ends with one of the most incredibly irritating boss fights I've ever encountered. Seriously, I quote Dardigan. Fuck this boss fight. Fuck this boss fight in particular. We have the data we need to trade Damien for Nikki, but not for long when the bunker is hit by the hacker Default, who looks like this. Take note of that. Default also kindly reveals that Clara has been hiding something from us.
Let me play.
It wasn't too difficult to find them. Two men. One's a hacker, the other a fixer, as far as I could tell. Never heard of them before.
I can't explain. I wanted to tell you.
Nice work. Names, please.
Are you planning to hurt them?
When has that ever bothered you? I trust the amount is satisfactory.
Damien Brinks and Aiden Pierce.
Aiden, someone's knocking.
Clara.
But Default poses a more current problem, however, as he steals the data, and after we go to stall Damien being exposed in the process, we work to track down Default, following his trail to his club where we head in and try to find him, scanning individual people in an effort to uncover the hacker. Hidden among the crowd, anyone could be him. We might just have to scan them all. Alright, seriously, why is this treated as a surprise? After a chase, I took him down and made sure he was super duper extra dead. Keep that in mind. After this debacle, the cards start to fall into place as we track down where Nikki is being held and we head to go get her, guiding her out with cameras before getting her back to Jackson, starting the most irritating mission of all time. We're tasked with evading police detection while driving Nikki and Jax out of the city, and I swear this is the worst design level of all time. It denies you any chance at creativity, forcing you to try again and again to find the path the developers have laid out for us. It seriously almost made me put the game down altogether with how much it irritated me, and it's only a few minutes long. With his family safe and Damien no longer able to hold anything over his head, Aiden can finally get back to what he should have been doing the whole time, going after Lucky Quinn for putting the hit out in the first place. When we back him into a corner, he reveals the truth. They made a mistake going after Aiden and Damien, thinking they were there to steal not money, but the blackmail they were keeping Chicago's mayor in their pocket with. This doesn't matter to Aiden, however. Lena is dead, which is all he cares about, and while this panic room has glass enough to stop our bullets, everyone has a weakness. Exploiting his pacemaker, Aiden will kill Lucky Quinn, watching as the life drains out from him mere inches away.
Quinn's dead. This is the part where I'm supposed to say I feel empty, right? I'd be lying to myself. I finally feel awake, like I can breathe again. And Lena? Nothing can change her death. But maybe I can still do something that'll make a difference.
I have to say I really do love this monologue, not because it's full of cheer or growth or hope for the future, but because it's who Aiden is. He's a broken man who's adopted the persona of the vigilante. He's accepted the role of a bad man who does bad things to worse people. Unfortunately, when you walk that road, you're going to have a hard life. You don't get to be a bad person and have good things happen to you. You see, Clara didn't know that we had rescued Nikki, so when she reached out to Damien hoping to trade her life for Nikki's, he accepted her offer. Only she couldn't have known that to Damien, a fair exchange wouldn't be one prisoner for another, but one life for another. I love the mission title for our finale. Sometimes you still lose. Isn't that fitting? Aiden has had enough and decided to go full scorched earth, dumping all the blackmail info we pulled from a Rack's server on the net, which upsets Damien a little bit. Damien takes control of CTOS and uses it to turn the city against us, raining down chaos on Chicago. It's a fun obstacle to overcome as the world seems to close in around us as we fight back trying to lock him out of the servers before tracking him back to a lighthouse where we have our final confrontation. We have a standoff which is interrupted by Jordy of all people. Well, the two of us have massive contracts on our heads, and Jordy is a fixer who works for money, so that makes plenty of sense. Although I can't seem to remember learning how he'd know we were here. We take him down with the usual one-button magic before killing Damien.
I don't know what Damien wanted in those final moments. Death, I suppose. I thought I could fix a little girl's death, but instead it led to all of this. Exposed lies, corrupted kings, a broken city. And me, changed man. I don't look back anymore. I don't regret. I look forward. Everything is connected, and I'll use that to expose, to protect, and if necessary, to punish.
I have to say, I love the fact that Aiden definitely thinks he's the good guy here when he's so clearly in the midst of his villain arc. Even choosing to spare Maurice in the end won't absolve Aiden of all his sins. That being said though, I like his character. Not everyone wants to be redeemed, not everyone deserves it. Sometimes it's best to just respect what a character is and leave it at that. So that's Watch Dogs. The promise of a sandbox that boils down to boom and bang. A protagonist whose arc boils down to, nah, all that bad shit I did was right and I should keep doing it. It had the potential to be something really special, but the truth is simply that Watch Dogs was an average game with moments of brilliance. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a reason this game won't be remembered by a huge crowd. I don't love Watch Dogs and I don't hate it. I'm apathetic towards Ubisoft's generational showcase. What I do derive emotion from, however, is Bad Blood. Bad Blood touches greatness. It was right there and it fell at the last hurdle. Let's talk about how. Raymond Kenny, the man who tried to warn us. A former Bloom employee working during the creation of the CTOS, the one who saw the writing on the wall and decided the world had to know how dangerous it was. So he used the vulnerabilities in the system to cause a massive blackout, one that caused the deaths of 11 people. Good men mean well, they just don't always do well. He had intended to show people a glimpse at their future, to let them peer through the looking glass and see the nightmare that awaited them. He never intended to willfully fulfill his own prophecy. But realizing the evil he had wrought, Raymond Kenny would hide himself away from the world, trying to drown the memory of his malfeasance in his dark little corner. However it was delivered, the warning was out there, and perhaps, had it been heeded, then the world could have avoided what it would become, but they wouldn't listen. The man will be branded a terrorist, a lone operator, a rogue agent whose actions could not be repeated in the future. There were a select few who still believed in him, however, some who even called him a hero, and when Aiden Pierce came knocking, he was convinced to return to the world. We pick up with Ray after the events of Watch Dogs. Aiden, having finished his war with Lucky Quinn and Damien after revealing the truth to the world, had moved on to his next mission. And we find Ray getting ready to leave as well. The story picks up as the hacker does what he does best, sitting in a desk at Bloom, planting a deceptive code that will allow him to slip away from Bloom while they chase a phantom he left in their system. When caught, he tries to play it off, but his exit will be a bit flashier than intended, fighting his way out. Gameplay-wise, Ray is essentially identical to Aiden, and the only things added to Bad Blood is the very occasional ability to lock someone in a room, and an RC car you'll use on occasion. But we're here to discuss the story, not the gameplay, so don't expect a rehash or even much discussion of what you can get up to outside the narrative. When he gets back to the silo, Ray will lay down for one last rest in Chicago before he will get up tomorrow and make his escape. A wrench gets thrown in his plan, however, as he gets called from Tobias, who needs our help, having been kidnapped by fixers on his way to who knows where. It will ruin his chance at escape, but our boy isn't one to let his friends' calls go unanswered, so he will head out to rescue Tobias. Unfortunately, this will not be the end of our problems, as he needs help and we're the only ones who can help him, so back to Bloom we go. Turns out they're after him, and now we need to find out why. It gets worse when we learn that Tobias was actually just a way to get to Ray, and now that we have a new problem we have to deal with. This is when the story really heats up as we find out Default, yes, that Default, is not only working with Bloom against us, but doing it for free. Now we need to find out why. This right here will likely go down as the best story writing ever in a Watch Dogs game, as after walking into his trap, we find out the connection between Raymond Kenny and Default as we're walked into Ray's nightmare. We're walked through all 11 people who were killed by the blackout he caused, seeing their names and how they died, how Ray's actions killed them. It's genuinely unnerving, and I can only imagine that for Kenny, it was even worse, and you can hear it in his voice. He tries to power through it, to battle back against Default, but then he learns the truth. Default's brother, given the opportunity by Kenny's blackout, would take his own life, giving Default a reason to seek vengeance against Ray for what he saw as the murder of his brother. This is dark, but my god, I can think of very few stronger motivations for an antagonist, especially in a Ubisoft title. We already had Kenny constantly followed by his grief over what he had done, never able to forgive himself, never able to move on. And here, after he finally allowed himself to re-enter the world, to try and start again, his demons would come calling in the form of the Rat. Someone with not only the will, but the skills to destroy Ray. This right here could have been the plot of an entire game. Alas, we'll get it in a couple missions, but regardless, it's what inspired me to write this essay. I was blindsided by how powerful it was. It was so out of character for this game, and I'm afraid to say they'll never reach such heights again. The story ends shortly after this, and all we'll have to do is defend the silo, and then it'll be time to go on the attack, launching our final mission against Default's lair. In the end, Ray will face his demons head-on, being led into a room with Default and the 10 others who lost someone because of his blackout. They stand above him, ready to judge him for his crimes. Raymond makes a plea to those in front of him, acknowledging that while he deserves to suffer for what he did, that those people he hurt don't deserve to share in his misery, that they deserve to let go and move on. He understands what it's like to live with the blood of these innocents on his hands, but it's on his hands alone, and he doesn't want anyone else to bear that burden. What I love about this scene so much is that some do hear him, some do leave, but they are the few. And the many decide that no, Ray Kenny must die. There will be no forgiveness, there will be no living with his crimes as his punishment. For these sins, he must be killed. We witness the gleeful execution of the man who had cost so many their peace. The death of Ray would have been the perfect end to his character, and fall perfectly in line with the tone of Watch Dogs. Sometimes growth isn't enough. Sometimes you still lose. Would have been a cool thought, but they weren't brave enough for that, and instead we turn the tables on the most dangerous hacker ever to live with a glorified QTE. It sucks the air out of the room both literally and figuratively, killing Default and saving Ray, making for one hell of a boring ending. Some stories don't deserve a happy ending. I'm sorry, they just don't. Kenny was haunted by the fact that in an attempt to send a warning, he had cost the lives of 11 people and hadn't changed the world for the better. The perfect ending to his story would have been for him once again trying to warn these people, trying to tell them he knew better, and being denied yet again only to fall at their feet. Raymond Kenny could have become the ultimate martyr to the cause, his efforts only recognized in death. The point of every other story in the damn world is that it's never too late to be a good person, that it's never too late to grow. But Watch Dogs was different. Aiden wasn't the hero in the end. He became nothing more than a vigilante on a power trip. The message of the game could have been actions have consequences. No matter how far you run, no matter where you hide, vengeance will come calling and you will pay for your crimes. It could have been interesting, it could have been different, but it was not to be. Don't get me wrong, I like Ray and I'm happy for him as a character that he will get to go on, but from a storytelling perspective, we could have had something that was so much more. But in the end, it was just another story where the hero gets to live because he's the good guy and he deserves it. Default could have been to Ray what Aiden was to Lucky Quinn. I know a man who intended to do good and an evil mob boss aren't the same thing, but if you have a brother, you know damn well that no amount of context matters. I don't care what your intentions were, you killed my brother, that's all that matters. I'll never get to see him again, and for that you will die. This could have been one of the most impactful stories ever told, but they squandered the opportunity, and that fucking sucks. Both Watch Dogs and Bad Blood frustrated me endlessly because there's so much potential here and so many moments where they seem to live up with it, but it just feels like there was some cosmic force pulling it apart. I can speculate on what that force was, but I won't bother. I don't know. I think I was just hopeful that something great was about to happen and I kept getting let down. I don't know if after this I want to recommend Watch Dogs. Maybe if you can find it in a humble bundle or something, but man, as much as I talk about them, I don't really want to recommend giving Ubisoft money, especially right now. Watch Dogs, like so many Ubisoft titles, is the story of what ifs and could have beens. They had an interesting protagonist, one who was only a hero when he was the one telling the story, and that could have been really interesting. But we spent the vast majority of the game with him running around under the thumb of another person with his sister's life on the line, used to justify his horrible actions. How would we have viewed the treatment of Bedbug if it wasn't within the context of saving Nikki? What if Aiden had gone after Clara for her involvement in Lena's death? Where would we draw the line on avenging her death? Aiden was a challenging and complex character that we never really got to see fully realized. And then in Bad Blood, we had literally 2 scenes worth of an epic tortured hero versus a wronged villain saga that could have been an all-time story, but essentially became nothing. Tossed aside for what I can only assume to be the awesome spectacle we saw in other missions like the Haunted Mansion and the Silo. Maybe I've just been spoiled having spent so much time immersed in the writing masterclass that is CT Project as of late that I'm overly sensitive to average stories, but I don't think so. I don't think it's too much to ask for people with access to AAA resources and a fantastic idea to live up to it. I can see the vision. I can see where this is a game that 10 years later I'm telling you has to be played, but it's not. I'm sorry I don't have a happier note for you this week, but it just wasn't to be. I'll play Watch Dogs 2 next, which will be a very different game, and maybe I'll have something better to say. I hope so. Until then, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and all that, and follow me on the links in the description if you want updates on the next projects. Also, if any of you know how to get Far Cry 2 working in 2024, I beg that you tell me. I want to play it. Oh, and watch American Fiction if it's still in theaters when you see this. It was hilarious. With that, I'm out. This is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
Well, security in these buildings is pretty tight, so people like this feel nice and secure living way up here. I mean, these people just had a simple chain lock on their door. I guess they want to have a good look at the pizza guy before they open it all the way.
All right, fine, sure. So about this problem.
Well, that's why I brought the bolt cutters. He opens the door this much, there's a chain right there, I slip him in and snip, and guess what? It's not the pizza guy.